Welcome to the Black Press Live Special. Tonight we start off Black Music Appreciation Month, and there's no better way to start off with our special guest. You've heard of Def Jam Records. You've heard of the Beatsy Boys, Public Enemy, LL Cool J, and Run DMC. Well, before Jay-Z, Diddy, and Dr. Dre, there was Russell Simmons, the original godfather of hip hop, who began as a promoter, manager, record producer, and label owner who changed the face of hip hop in so many ways at Def Jam, the label he co-founded with producer Rick Rubin. Russell Simmons pioneered the rap rock crossover with Rubin on Run DMC's Walk This Way. And he co-produced the first gold certified hip hop single for Kurtis Blow and the first gold certified hip hop album for LL Cool J. Yeah, he's a hit maker. He's a star maker. More than that, Russell Simmons blended the world of hip hop and fashion with Run DMC, and he helped create a global audience for rap music. Welcome, Russell Simmons.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice to see you, Stacy. And I see Brother Ben Chavis, Muhammad. How are you, brother?
I'm fine. It's good to be here on behalf of the National Newspaper Publishers Association. Stacey Brown is our senior, I'm not going to call him national correspondent. He's now a global correspondent. And of course, there's one other attribute, Stacey, I wanted to add to Russell's introduction. He's a genius humanitarian, global humanitarian. And Russell Simmons has opened the doors for so many artists, for so many influencers in the world of hip hop, in the global. And the fact that we're doing this interview live tonight globally, he's in Bali, I'm in Washington, D.C., you're in Jersey, and the NNPA headquarters is here in D.C. We're on a curfew just imposed by the government. And I feel so sorry for all those young people out in Lafayette Park right now who are being tear gassed or who have been shot with rubber bullets just because they were exercising their First Amendment right to say no. The government is not always right. Sometimes the government is wrong. And we have a right to raise our voices. We have a right to lift up. But I just want to say that we're honored to start Black Music Month with the icon himself, Russell Simmons. I'm so pleased. I've known him for many, many years. And a lot of what I have done in my life is because of Russell Simmons.
Ben, that's very generous of you. I want to, and this is not just to blow smoke up you. You have been my mentor in all of the civil rights work that we've done together, whether it's getting Black men, maybe, 10,000 Black men out of jail, or whether it's been marching for justice on so many issues. You have always been the mentor and given me leadership so I could then help to lead some of young people in hip hop towards some better understanding of or opportunity in America. So you've always been there, and you've been a leader to so many. And I don't know that the world is celebrates you for it as the way they should, but I want to just make this statement now that I wouldn't be here without you. So thank you.
Thank you.
I want to, as much as I'd like to talk about signing Jay-Z or some hip hop experiences, I'd like to talk more about this moment in time and the opportunity that it presents for us. Because for 30 years, Ben, and you've been there and you've been giving me direction in these kind of instances, so many times we've been at this threshold, maybe not as loud as this, maybe not as many supporters outside of Black supporters for our Black cause and Black issue, which is an American issue, an American cause. We've never seen the outcry from such diversity for the liberation of Black people for any issue. I've never seen it. I remember marching in Black Lives Matter not so long ago. I remember Nas and I led a march, and Khloe Kardashian sent out a tweet, and then we walked down Fifth Avenue. I remember thinking, oh my God, there's 70% non-African American people in the streets. A very peaceful march we had on that day. And we marched down Fifth Avenue, marched all the way to Harlem. And that was something that I had not seen a lot of. Maybe in the civil rights days, Ben, just before my time, you saw some of that. But to see so many non-blacks out was a moment. But the issue with Black Lives Matter and the issue that we faced regarding police brutality has always had the same solutions. OGs can help with this because young people are out and they're angry and they don't really realize that solutions have been come up with over and over again. They just never been executed. So police accountability is something that will never happen so long as we don't make them accountable. And police unions, and I've worked with Noble National Organization of Black Lawmakers. Is that what a national organization of Black lawmakers? We've had this enforcement, Black law enforcement. We've had these problems, and we discussed it with all the 100 Black police, and there's so many Black organizations, but never really the mainstream have accepted. They've kind of head faked us as if they might change, but the fact is we never had independent prosecutors. And so all the Black men and women who are dead today that seem to have not gotten justice, not only seem to, but have not received justice, haven't received justice because prosecutors have not had the freedom. They've been put in awkward or impossible situations. Those prosecutors who work with police cannot prosecute police. That's always been a very simple and basic problem. And every time we discuss it, they give us sensitivity training. And I remember I've sat through and watched Captain Dennis in Detroit, in New Orleans, in Philadelphia. We've seen police sensitivity training everywhere. Not always just the pacified community, but it's not systematic in terms of change. We need a real change. And that's the one that I think that we should go back to, which we've been to countless times. But now in this moment of unrest, there's a real solution that we can at least, there's one of many real solutions. Having police accountable is the number one issue we're discussing today. And also police accountability when it comes to their brothers. Right now, by not accusing the 3 other accomplices, we are pointing to the real problem that we've had, that police have this blue code that they don't prosecute each other and they're not held accountable when they don't. So if you're in a police car and you know for sure you're going to be prosecuted because your partner is dirty, the culture will change. You're not going to jail. You're not going to ruin your family because some guy next to you. But we need to make it clear that the partners of those who are committing these crimes are also accomplices. And we need to make some kind of legislation change in that regard. And we've been talking to some of the congressmen, and I've talked to a lot of the rap community members, Snoop, Killer Mike, some of the more astute, politically astute rappers, to talk about how we can bring this to the public, because it ain't going to happen just given to the politicians.
Yeah, Russell. No, that's okay. What you're saying is really important. Just for our viewers to know, once again, we are kicking off Black Music Appreciation Month with the icon Russell Simmons, but we can't ignore what's going on now with the George Floyd situation and the aftermath. And Russell has been at the forefront not only of music. I was with Russell a few months before the pandemic. We were in New York. Russell does this great work with the young people being killed in New York, shot in New York. Every year, he has a big dinner for the mothers of these young ones. So Russell's been at the forefront. I mean, that's just one recent example, just to let everyone know he hasn't stopped. And we will be talking about music. There's a lot of music fans on watching us right now, Russell. There's a lot of Run DMC fans, as you would imagine, one being right there in Queens, Tracy Campbell. She's watching. So many others are watching. But I want you to talk about, too, tie this in, because hip hop has always made a statement when it came to injustice.
Well,
Can you talk about that?
My early activism on this particular subject came out of fuck the police. So what does this mean? Well, it means they're frustrated. And what do we get from it? And what do we get from it? That song gave us police sensitivity training. That song gave us, that was the first time I can recall being involved with police, law enforcement, talking about the solutions to the problems of a police abuse from that song. And Cop Killer as well, Ice-T and Ice Cube and NWA. Those songs came out around the same time. It was outrage, but there was no cameras, see? So it wasn't as obvious, and it was a black issue, and whites couldn't understand it. They understood it enough to know that we needed change. And the only change we got was, again, sensitivity training, which is not bad, which is necessary. But it's not the change that will give prosecutors, some new prosecutors, some kind of jurisdiction over bad cops.
Yeah, absolutely. And Russell, you mentioned the Million Man March. You have also been at the forefront. A lot of people don't seem to realize even women's movement is whatever justice, where injustice was, Russell Simmons was there. Can you talk a little bit about those other movements, the Million Man March, other movements that you've spearheaded?
Well, you know, working for the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and Dr. Chavis on the Million Man March, and even more, I think more directly on the Million Family March. You know, I've always believed in the oneness of humanity. And I believe that the activism that you promote to others is the core of what activism or what freedom that you deserve for yourself. So if you don't go out and give others what you want for yourself, you're not deserving of it for yourself. So I've been always using my voice as much as I can for my own salvation. Selfishly, I fight for women. Selfishly, I fight for men who are locked out. I fought for the black community selfishly so that I can, as an individual, survive myself. Your freedom comes from the freedom you give. I believe that. So, you know, I've been an activist, and all the way extends to animals. And I know people say, well, what about animals? Well, even animals, the 200 billion animals that are made to be born into suffering, that is not dominion over the animals. So compassion is a core component for those who want to have a happy life. We have to give out compassion. And so that's just been my demeanor as much as I can make it so, because it's my own salvation. So
Exactly.
women's movements, black economics, black freedom in every way, and black suffering is always on my mind. But there's suffering, you know, in so many instances where you can just simply lift, especially when you're lucky enough to have a relationship with so many people. You know, my social media today, or before, my ability to activate other music artists to create noise around subjects that matter to them and to their communities. It's been a pleasure to be a servant in this way, because it's given me purpose.
Russell,
Absolutely.
you mentioned, I'm sorry, Dr. Chavis, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to tie in the fact that this is Black Music Appreciation Month. To me, one of the enduring and everlasting contributions that Russell Simmons and hip hop culture has made to the world is that it transcends race, that it transcends the divisions of our world and divisions of our society. Right now, the United States of America is polarized once again, based on a police murder of George Floyd, a vicious police murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis. But that murder by the police in Minneapolis was not isolated. There are all kinds of countless names, men, women, and children, who have been put to death by racially motivated police brutality. But hip hop has helped advance racial equality. Hip hop has helped advance people talking about the oneness of humanity, the oneness of God, instead of judging one another by what religion you are, or what your skin color is, or what kind of clothes you wear, or what kind of house you live in, or what kind of car you drive. The element of humanity. Then Russell and hip hop has helped us to learn more about the environment, that we have to not only be our brothers and our sisters keepers, but we have to be custodians of the world in which we live in. And so the same people who deny the climate, who deny climate change, are the same people that deny racial equality, are the same people that deny health disparities, are the same people that deny economic inequalities. And so I just think that I don't want us to separate our music from what is going on in the world. Because if you know how hip hop evolved out of the South Bronx 40 years ago, or more than 40 years ago, it was the catalyst for people not only to dance, to do artwork, to create vibes, to create lyrics, but it was also a way to transcend all of these divisions. And Lord knows what we need in America today is more unity, but with a purpose. Russell mentioned the independent prosecutors. That is what's needed right now in Minneapolis. And that's what's needed in Kentucky. That's what's needed down in Georgia, where these vigilantes just executed a brother that was jogging. So whether it's breathing while black, jogging while black, living while black, but it's just not for black people, because Latinos, whites, Asians, all people suffer these disparities. But I'm hopeful. To me, I get re-inspired when I see people speak out, stand up. You know, we're at some level, we're all poets. We're all lyricists. We have to give that essence that not only wakes people up, but keep them awake and push them forward to make the whole world change into a better place.
Well, and to your point, Dr. Chavis, I want to go back to what Russell was saying about these songs that he mentioned, Ice Cube, Ice-T, and others. Nicole McDaniel is watching, and she says that, and I want you to respond to this, Russell. She says, yes, those songs did bring the issue to the masses, but that was over 30 years ago, and yet we're still here, where we are today.
Well, thank you, Nicole. That's a statement that I've been making. I wrote a letter, which I might have sent you, Ben, just before we started this. Here's the thing. We've pushed, and the unions have, sheepishly acted, head faked us in many cases. Well, not so many. Most cases, absolutely. They have not supported the idea of independent special prosecutors. It is necessary. It has always been necessary to have independent prosecutors, and it always is also necessary to break the blue wall and to have, you should be in your police car. You should look at your partner and say, I cannot be here. I got to tell, I have a family. You shouldn't feel safe. Like the three who I'm sure they don't feel safe at this moment, and I'm sure if we keep the pressure up, we'll get some justice. But or at least some, but they are free from judgment when their partners do wrong. We have to put the pressure on police to do police work, even on police. And that has to be a legal question. There has to be a charge brought up against all those who sit still while their partners commit criminal behavior. They are also accomplices, and they should be charged. So that's one, and the second one is the prosecutor who will charge all of the lot in these cases. It's great that our brother Keith Ellison has been brought into this particular case. We can't, every time something happens, pray that some outside prosecutor will be brought in to bring justice. It has to be the norm that it automatically goes to a different prosecutorial board that will judge whether or not to charge a policeman in every case. We've been saying this for years and years, and every time it slips under the rug. Police unions get away with the murder of so many people of color, and never are police prosecuted and found guilty. Never. Look about the last time they said I can't breathe. Eric Garner Sr., the policeman got off because the prosecutor was handcuffed. In all of these cases, the prosecutors are handcuffed. So that's the thing I want to stay on, because it seems like one of many things. There was someone on the phone talking about Joe Biden and how entrepreneurs could now ask for this and that and push him on. For me, if I could push for one issue, one at a time. For me, I think this moment, which is not unlike other moments, it may be more extreme. They may be running up in Gucci instead of the local bodega. And I saw them in Rodeo Drive. I was amazed. And this is, there's a good sign in that you see people who are not from our community, who are tired as well. We haven't seen a lot of that over the last 50 years. So seeing that is very, very important, because now we have a unified front. And now if we have the right issues to attack, not just the Gucci, but if we have real issues that we can, and things that we can change, we have to put those things on the table so the people who are protesting can see what they have to win. And that's what I want to do. I want to put this issue in front of some people and enough people that they can't ignore it.
Yeah, and Annette Phillips writes about her late husband, Larry Davis. She says he had stayed about police corruption for years. I guess she means he stated about police corruption for years. We know the story of Larry Davis. Nicole Yvonne Duncan Smith says we have to create a culture where it is safe to speak up. And one other gentleman, Adrian Muldrow, he says hip hop has given folks black and white and green their identity. And Russell, we know that hip hop speaks to a lot of people, not just black people.
Well, yes, this is our opportunity to bring people together for common good. And I think a win like this, but they have to realize how big it is. Because I don't know that people who are protesting are fed up, but may not understand how important an issue like this is regarding the future and how we can, because the culture will only change when the law changes. The law changes and then everybody falls in line. When everybody starts getting arrested for their crooked partner, then the culture changes. The policeman in the car is like, I'm not doing this shit for you. You're doing that? I'm telling you, you are responsible for upholding the law, not only the law of civilians, but the law of police. There's law, and you are there to uphold the law. And therefore, if someone around you, law enforcement or not, breaks the law, you're responsible. And if you're not responsible, then you're responsible. And that's what we have to make clear. And so that's what I want to work on with you, Ben, with the hip hop community. And if I get that one thing in front of enough people, then I will be useful. And that to me that's my mission now.
Yeah, Dr. Chavis, before you weigh in on that, I know you will, and bring us some serious knowledge on that too. We're again speaking live with the icon himself, Russell Simmons, and just so everyone will know, there's so much love out there for Russell, so Russell will know. Last week, Dr. Chavis, we had the privilege of having Ice Cube on our show, and I want to show a clip from that interview right quick. Go ahead. Cube, just so you know, Russell Simmons checked in and says, "Give Cube my undying love." So I just wanted to pass that on to you.
First of all, shout out to Russell Simmons. I wouldn't be here without him. He, he's definitely, paved the way for artists to be in a position like this, because he saw us bigger than we saw ourselves at the time. So I just want to acknowledge that. But back to Barbershop.
Your response, Russell, Ice Cube's love to you?
Well, I'm a big fan of Ice Cube. I'm going to send this letter over to him for signage, along with Killer Mike and Snoop and others who've already committed to sign it. The OGs who worked so hard, and the man who started it all, Ice Cube, with that song, Fuck the Police. That's how I became an activist. Because at that moment, as someone who was labeled the godfather of hip hop, I had to not only defend, but I had to explain his statement, fuck the police. His statement, it was raw and it was unfiltered and it was factual. It was how we felt. And especially where Ice Cube came from, the abuse was so rampant. And so they made that song and people said, why? There were no videos. So why? And he made a video. He made the statement. And it was the first time that I started to have dialogue with law enforcement about the fixes that need to be made, the same fixes that we're talking about today. Ice Cube's a hero of mine, so that's a pretty inspired statement from him. I thank him for that.
Yeah, and Dr. Chavis, I know you wanted to weigh in on what Russell was saying. We certainly wanted to make sure that we showed him that Ice Cube clip, because there is, as we said, we get messages all the time about Russell Simmons, and they're all love.
Exactly. Well, again, this is the importance of the black press. That's the reason why we had Ice Cube. That's the reason why we had Chuck D. And the reason why we're going to have a lot of others during this month and other months. Because for me, Black Music Month is every month. For me, Black History Month is every month. For me, hip hop is every day, every hour, 24/7 on the globe, around the world. And I think that, Russell, the letter that you're getting signatures, the Black Press of America, the National Newspaper Publishers Association, we want to help circulate that letter, that petition, so we can get tens of thousands of names where we can demand change in the way justice is executed in America. Because right now, this is a systemic problem. It's an institutionalized problem. And the recommendation that you're making will help alter the good old boys club, where people are covering from one another. I think that we need to break that up. We need to penetrate that. And quite frankly, we have a lot of hip hop heads who are in law enforcement themselves, but we need more than just a nod. We need activism inside those who wear those uniforms, as well as those on the outside, the community at large. We deserve better. I remember it's almost 30 years ago now, the videotape of Rodney King. So just think about it. The videotape of Rodney King almost 30 years ago being beat by the LA police, to the video of George Floyd being murdered by the police in Minneapolis. So we've come a long way, but we still got a mighty long ways to go. And I'm so proud of the masses. Russell, all 50 states have had demonstrations, are having demonstrations tonight, even including Alaska and Hawaii. People are coming out in masses. They're doing it peacefully. There's some who are, engaging in things that they should not. But overall, there's been a mass protest, a mass outspokenness about this. And I think our culture has always been aligned with the aspirations of people for freedom, justice, and equality. And I believe that we're going to raise up a new generation of freedom fighting artists, Russell, like you have opened the door for so many years.
Ben, the black press has, in many cases, Stacey, for instance, more recently you, have been courageous enough to say things that the white press suppresses intentionally about Black people and about our condition. And I've seen now, and especially in this polarized moment, where people have a narrative, and no matter what truth comes forward, they continue to promote the same narrative. So the Black press has shown me courage, and it's necessary, and has always been necessary, but more today than ever, because what we call a progressive movement today has turned into an angry left-wing movement. Progressives are listeners. Ben, you've always been a great listener. The Black press is open-minded, but is firm on truth. And I see that, and I know that we now have a greater role. And I say we because I always feel I'm with the Black press. Have a greater role to play as we have this polarized world, we need people who are bridge builders and who see truth and want to figure out ways to get it to light. Black press has done a lot of it. I've seen it over the last years, and I see now there's a moment where the black press can grow, and it can be the voice of a whole progressive community, because they sympathize with, they see, they are humanity. They see blacks and underserved communities being ignored and pushed to the side, and they see the separation or the polarization that has become the norm in this social media world. In other words, people living in algorithm hell, they're learning what they know already and nothing else. They're promoting what they promoted already and nothing else. And that is a lack of knowledge. And social media and the algorithms are keeping them from learning anything different.
Exactly.
So we need a free press that is free, that is not controlled by corporations, that's not controlled by agendas, old narratives. We need people who are open to hear and then to share truth so that we can change the world for the better. So the black press has been there and is really now more important than ever.
Yeah, Annette Phillips says she writes, I've been working against police corruption since 1992. Adrian Muldrow says, indeed, we need the black press. Adrian Muldrow also asks, he says, Uncle Rush, he says, you got the hood and gangsters going vegan and doing yoga and meditating, trying to get conscious and change their lives. We see your program every night on Instagram. Can you educate people on that?
Well, I just finished a book, and it's called Eat to Live. Eat to Live, the Post-Pandemic Lifestyle. First of all, what we're learning, you can watch as many documentaries. There's The Game Changer. There's Next, What the Health. There's so many documentaries and so much research. The thing about those documentaries, if they were not accurate, they would be sued, because the animal and the factory farming industries, which are going against God's demands in his scriptures, in all of his scriptures, are poisoning us and making us susceptible to any virus that comes along. The fact is that black people, all people, are not supposed to eat the amount of meat that we eat. 200 billion animals are not supposed to be made to be born into suffering, so that we can be sick and so that we can destroy the planet. What good is it to get cancer, to abuse 200 billion animals, and to destroy the planet? There is no good, no conscious person who understands the ramifications would do so, but it's habit. And you know that unconscious behavior can last for hundreds of years. Slavery, apartheid, witch hunts, so many things happen, and people just turn a blind eye. People are waking up to the fact is we need a plant-based diet. So the book I wrote, Eat to Live, can tell you that all of these pre-existing health conditions that we're dying from, we're not dying from COVID, we're dying from diabetes, we're dying from heart disease, we're dying from all of the pre-existing conditions. So our diet can not only improve those conditions, but can reverse them completely. So if we eat the right food, then the things that are killing us will disappear, and COVID can come and go. So 99% of the people who died in Italy, is where the research came back, were people who had pre-existing health conditions. Everyone else got sick and got better. So we need to be prepared for the next round of COVID. We need to stop eating animal product. It sounds like a tall order, but blacks are 3 times more likely to go vegan than their white counterparts. 3 times. It's not a rich white diet, as it turns out. It turns out that blacks are more likely by far to go vegan than their white counterparts. And we need, since we have the pre-existing health condition, since we are way more likely to die from COVID. We need a new diet and some exercise. And we need that because that's the nucleus of our happiness. What we put in us and how we treat our body is an important part of our relationship with Mother Earth and all that's in it. Our happiness is dependent on that. And so as we start to shift our diet and our consciousness regarding the suffering of animals, we suffer less and we live longer.
So, Stacey, that's a good transition. Russell, tell us and tell the world, what are you doing in Bali, man?
Well, I'm back and forth, Ben. I'm stuck here for the there's no COVID, so I have to admit it's I got lucky enough to be stuck here during this time, but I moved here under fire with media, and I came just to visit, and then I came back to America, and then I came back, and I came back to the fourth time I came here, Ben. I started building a house.
Right.
So I have an office in LA and one in New York, and I have office in 13 countries around the world. And I'm building a bridge between Asia and America. And I have office, of course, in Indonesia as well, of course. But I have office in Japan. I have office in China and Philippines. I have office in Korea. I have office. And so the company Gus Cloud, I'm building a yoga broadcast network, which is a worldwide network.
Yes.
And I met some people. And 2.5 or 3 years ago, now I invested in their company and I became the president. And the company is called Gus Cloud. So I have a bridge building process. So we represent quite a few American artists now. We didn't have an American office, but I opened one. And now we represent all these American artists, basketball players and others, supermodels, Naomi Campbell and Kyle Guzman, and many. So we represent them, and no white men in suits know how to represent them. Well, you got to realize in China, they had a show called HipHop. What's it called? Rap of China. The Rap of China had 1 billion people watch one episode. Now, I know somebody had to watch it twice because only 1,400,000,000 people. 1 billion people saw the Rap of China, one episode. So hip hop is not being exploited properly, and white men in suits can't do the job. They just can't do it. So who's going to represent American or Western interests in China? And Chinese interests are not represented well in America. So the bridge building process, which is my life's work anyway, is a part of what I do here in Asia. So, I never would have thought in a million years that I would find hip-hop, vegan and yoga Disneyland in Bali. But that's what we have here. I mean, So the idea of self-study, this city that I live in, Ubud, is a magical spiritual city.
Yes.
And people move here from all over the world for self-realization. And I'd like to tell you that there is no other goal in life except the knowledge of self. And as we move towards knowing the self, we move towards God. So to know the self is to know God. And so self-study is the core of our existence on this planet. So we're studying the self, whether we're robbing a bank or whether we're praying. But to find the right path towards God, this is what each of us are looking for. And when we find the right path, we move a little faster and a little bit more ease towards this full awareness, awakened state. And this is what yogis are looking for, samadhi, what Christians call Christ consciousness, what Buddhists call nirvana, what Muslims call taqwa. This idea of union with God is life's work. And every second that you feel this union with God is the result of some effort you're making. And every effort we make in every instance is for more seconds of presence or awakened time here on earth where we see God in the things in front of us.
Well, thank you, Russell. I know that we want to do a series on what you've learned, these teachings that are universal. One of the things the Black Press wants to do, we want to always not only report what is going on in the world, but understand it so we can also be an advocate for truth, an advocate for consciousness. A mutual friend of yours and mine is Deepak Chopra. And, we always talked about the importance of consciousness, what's on people's minds. And I can tell you now in the United States of America, which I think is a positive thing, there's a growing mass demand for freedom, justice, and equality. There's a growing mass demand for an end to police and to racially motivated police murders. And I think that consciousness needs to be encouraged, needs to be supported, and we're going to continue to do about it. But I'm glad you answered that question in detail that you asked, because we get a lot of readers in the Black press who not only want to know where you are, Russell, but what you're doing and how the sense of the oneness of humanity, the oneness of God can benefit from the teachings that you're teaching out there and from the learnings that you're learning in that part of the world.
Yeah, again,
You know, Ben,
we are.
there is no difference between what Lord Buddha taught and Jesus and Muhammad and Abraham and what is in the Yoga Sutras. Yoga Sutras is not a religious book, but it's a science book. And the sciences of religions are one and the same. And that to me is something that I think we should share more often, because there's too many instances where we feel separate because of religion instead of connected because of religion. And we want to reverse that for those who don't quite understand what's in their own scripture.
Russell Simmons, we are with Russell Simmons, I should say, live. This is the Black Press Live. It is Black Music Appreciation Month. There's no better way of kicking it off. And I do want to ask some music questions.
Okay.
First and foremost, Russell, we know I was on the phone earlier today with Kurtis Blow, and I know that that's where it all began for you.
That's right. Kurtis Blow I remember he used to say, people in the place to bass in your face, you about to see first place in the rap race. Sounds you hear so good to your ear, have no fear, Kurtis Blow is here. And introducing Kurtis Blow in 1977. Used to have that opening rap, and he would say, introducing the Disco Dream on the Mean Machine, Darth Vader on the Slide Vader. He was talking about Grandmaster Flash. And so he performed, and then Robert Ford, who just passed away, saw him, and we recorded Christmas Rapping in 1979. So that performance and those words got to Robert, who came to actually record another artist, but saw Kurtis perform. And he produced Kurtis's Christmas Rapping. And Robert was my mentor, and he just passed away only a few days ago. And so Kurtis Blow was, and has always been my dear friend. And we've been through a lot of years together. But the king of rap.
Yeah, I went to Andrew Jackson High School there on Francis Lewis Boulevard, and our AJ, right? That song, and I remember our football team. We used to have the bleachers filled, and they would, every time Andrew Jackson scored, that song AJ would, and the bleachers would be rocking with that song, Russell. And
AJ.
Right, up in the Bronx. Yeah. So Russell, we all know that among the biggest known artists that you are responsible for includes your brother, the great Reverend Run Joseph Simmons, Run DMC. How did that begin, Russell?
Well, Joey was about 13, and he was the DJ for Kurtis Blow. And he used to say, faster than an exploding bullet from a gun, my son, DJ Run. He's called him his disco son. And Run used to cut the records. And he used to cut them so fast that you wouldn't even hear the sound. He would just cut the sizzle on the record. So imagine he'd say, good times, good. Cut so fast he couldn't hear nothing. And he was a great DJ. He broke his arm, and then Davey D became the DJ. And then Run became a rapper. And I remember in 81, watching Joey perform, we all decided that it was okay to record him. And we did in 83, end of 82, or in 82, out came It's Like That in Sucker MC.
Now you co-wrote or wrote or produced Sucker MCs, and It's Like That. Am I correct?
I produced Sucker MC and It's Like That, and I co-wrote Sucker MC. the drum beat, which, you know, back then there's nothing but a drum beat. That's the old music. I didn't get credit for it, but my brother Larry Smith could use it, and his family, and so I never really regretted it. But Sucker MC, that was my beat. My beat, Larry. I
it's a
used to tell
family
Larry,
fight, huh?
beat. Huh?
It's a family fight over that one, huh?
No, we didn't fight over it. Larry Smith produced so much and did so much good, and so that little bit of a writer's credit was not a big deal, but it was a big deal for me just to brag about. But I didn't mind not getting my credit.
Well, one of the biggest moments, if not the signature moment in hip hop history, was Turned Everything. And I want you to tell us how this came about. Run, DMC, and Aerosmith, Walk This Way. That changed the game forever.
Well, what happened was Run DMC were scratching over what we used to call toys in the attic. It was just a beat. And the most we'd hear is the beginning of the guitar rip, dun-dun-dun, and we just cut the beat. And we'd rap over the beat. And the intention was to make that beat into a b-boy record with no music, or just the minimal guitar riff, not even the riff, but just the beginning of it. And Rick Rubin loved Aerosmith and wanted to make the full record. So there's another version, which is more staccato, which is more of a rap record, which may not have been as big then, but would probably sound better today. But anyway, it was the moment. We already had made Rockbox. Larry Smith and I produced Rockbox and King of Rock. So it wasn't a foreign idea to use the guitars. So we did, and and Steven Tyler and Joe Perry came in the studio and we made that version of Walk This Way. And little did we knew that it was a more commercial record, I would say. And we knew that it was an interesting collaboration, but we didn't know that would be a defining moment for Run DMC. You know, you never know what's defining when you're doing something creative and having fun. You know that it's good for some core community members. Like, you're making this for your friends. You record things for your friends. You don't record for the masses, you know, especially as young creative people. We didn't shape our music or any of our ideas for everyone. We shaped them for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was it like, Russell, when you got the call that Run DMC was going into the Hall of Fame, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
I've never been one for accolades. As I'm getting older now, I'm just starting to recognize that they're worth something. You know, things like that came, and I would just they would come and go. I mean, there was so many at one moment. This one thing after another. You know, I didn't think much of it. And still haven't reflected too much on previous accomplishments. There's a future. And I know that you know, I know a lot of friends stuck on early hip hop days, archives, building museums, supporting the culture, protecting the culture. It's just something that I've not made a priority yet. You know, something's wrong with me. I think I got a long way to go.
Well, you recently, music recently lost an icon, and your great friend, Andre Harrell. Can you just remind the world what Andre meant to music?
Andre was an artist who I met at Bentley's. You know, back in '81, whatever year it was, I was out promoting records. I had Kurtis Blow as my artist, and I'm out promoting records for Polygram Records. They paid me to go to clubs. And I always liked diversity and interesting people from all walks of life. So I would go to the punk rock clubs, the Danceteria, and the Ritz, and the Peppermint Lounge, and these alternative punk clubs where they would sometimes play rap. And they generally wouldn't play a lot of my funk records that I got from Polygram, but they would sometimes play the rap records. And I would go to the gay clubs, the Paradise Garage, and the Loft, and Better Days, and there was all those famous DJs. And then I would go to the Midtown clubs, Bentley's and Leviticus and Pegasus and Justine's and there was so many midtown clubs, and you had to wear a sports jacket, and it was serious business in there. They didn't like me very much, but I had just gotten to a point where they let me in my sneakers. But it was a very serious, black polished crowd, and they played black polished music, and they would never play rap. They play the instrumental sometimes if it was Kevin Woodley, the DJ, but everybody else wouldn't play even the instrumental. So I would go to Bentley's, and I went in the booth at Bentley's, and there was Andre trying to get Genius of Love rap played. And I met him there, and he had on a suit and tie. And I used to think, so I became his manager, and I used to think, I didn't like the polish because they didn't like me. They didn't like the reminders of the hood in those polished places. So they didn't like me, and they didn't like rap. But Andre was a weird one because he was in there with a suit trying to get a rap record played. And and they had a record even, and they said suit and tie, extra fly. It's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. A suit and tie. So I used to always like them to wear their bow ties because they reminded me of Nation of Islam, and they were alternative enough. I just didn't want to be the mainstream. So I used to say, yeah, put on that bow tie. Like they were the members of the Nation of Islam. Because I didn't like the suit and tie thing. So Andre liked it. And while I had a disdain for the mainstream, Andre was not going to have being locked out of the mainstream. So he had to break down the doors of the mainstream. And then he made the records that suited that audience. So he brought me Mr. Big Stuff by Heavy D. And I was like, you got to leave. And he created Uptown Records. I was busy working on the Beastie Boys at the time. And all of the records that I thought were important and alternative. And he was making the mainstream happen. So what we called the mainstream was this bigger pop version. And what he called the mainstream was accessibility to the black community. The ones who didn't like us, they couldn't not like Mr. Big Stuff. That's Betty Wright. Shit, how we never like her? So he made those records and created that music. And then hip hop was taking over. By the time Andre really got hot, hip hop was taking over to the point where there was no R&B. Same people said all music and no rap. There was no R&B. And he made R&B cool again for young people. And that was what Andre did. And Uptown Records and Puffy and Mary J. Blige and all the things he created were like the queen of hip hop soul. He made soul hip hop. And that was his contribution. And losing him, my brother, broke my heart. And it brings me back to the same subject. The last time I spoke to Andre, I talked to him about his diet and about steady exercise, but his diet. And we have a problem in our community. They're poisoning us. They're poisoning us. They're setting us up. And if we're not prepared for the next round of COVID, many more of us are going to die. So this is why I wrote this book. I was 4 weeks into the book when I spoke to Andre last. It's completed now. Eat to live. And a post-pandemic lifestyle. We have to create a new lifestyle and a new diet. We have new information. And it's not old. See, the food that we're eating is not the same as the food we ate. So, I always ate this. No, you never ate that. This is new. What they're doing to the animal product is new. And so we need to do something about our diets. And I want to promote that, and I want to save some black lives between now and next pandemic. And I want people to have a different perspective about what they put in their bodies. And I dedicate the book to Andre and to my brother Robert Ford, who died. Diabetes was the big ailment for him. All of us are sick because of what we eat. All of us. So I'm praying that we can change our diets. Some of us, people say, oh, you can't change the world. You can change one person at a time. And I want to change some people. So I'm going to put this book out next few weeks. And I hope I can come back on your show and talk specifically about what food fights what pre-existing health condition and how we can reverse the problems that we have, whether it be heart disease or diabetes, or whatever it is, so that we can live a healthier, longer life.
So Russell, who's publishing the book?
Simon and Schuster.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
We'll help promote it.
Okay.
and Russell, speaking of that, one of our I just saw a message from one of our viewers who talked about what you're saying with the diet, and that individual was saying, will we be able to afford this healthy food? That's been a problem.
In the book, there is a group of menus. I mean, the menu and a group of recipes. Yeah, you know, people think it's expensive or impossible to go vegan. We do live in food deserts in some cases, and it is hard to get, but it's not that expensive. In fact, we can eat vegan cheaper than we can eat animal products. I mean, we can't go to McDonald's and get a salad cheaper than a burger, but we can go to the stores and get cheaper vegetarian food. You know, a lentil loaf is not more expensive than a beef loaf, you know, a meatloaf. Buffalo cauliflower is not more expensive than buffalo chicken. So that's not. So there's lots of ways around. I'm talking about, and the vegan lasagna is not more expensive than beef lasagna. It's just not. And so we can do that. We can make choices. And we can discover that we don't have to have everything that, you know, that sounds like something we've already eaten. But we'll learn over a period of time. You go to Taco Bell, you get a bean burrito, but don't get the hot clogging cheese. Just put guacamole instead. There's ways around it. And once you start to find your way into it, it becomes exciting. I'm a foodie. I love food. Remember I told you I live in vegan Disneyland. You know, it's not hard. But, you know, it takes a little bit of a shift. And after you do it for about 30 days, you say, oh, shit, I like this. I'm excited about this. I feel better. I've lost all this weight, you know, so I'm recommending that people do little things like, and it's one big one I always recommend over the last years, I've been recommending intermittent fasting. Let your body rest instead of always digesting food.
Well, I can testify to that. I've been doing intermittent fasting for the last 6 months. I've lost 40 pounds, and I feel a lot better.
Good.
So
That's
thank
fantastic.
you, Russell. Thank you, Russell, for recommending intermittent fasting. Because, you know, a lot of times people will recommend stuff and it doesn't really work.
I hate to interrupt you,
But it
Dr. Tate.
works.
We got a surprise special guest. Rebecca Gayhart has joined us.
Great.
Hello.
Hey,
Hi, how are you
thanks
guys?
for joining us.
Hello, Rebecca.
Hi, Russell. How are you? Nice to see you.
Good. Nice to be seen, sis.
Yeah. How's everyone doing?
We're doing well.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry I'm joining at the end of this. I'm really upset that I missed this.
Well, you didn't miss much.
We
Rebecca,
can go
you've
on a
heard
little
me
while
preach
longer.
about the same shit. It's the same thing. It's the diet. It's the choices we make. The one thing I talked about in criminal justice or in justice in general is that we've for 30 years been fighting police brutality, and always it's been the same. And I want to go back to this. It's always been that we need special prosecutors, that prosecutors who work for police cannot prosecute police. And if we get a different set of prosecutors, and all of these dead bodies, all of these people will have not died in vain. But we need that shift. And every time we talk about this over the 30 years, and every time there's a flare-up and a discussion, they give a little lip service, but they never change that system where the prosecutors are controlled by the police and so therefore never prosecute the police. They never change it. And that's one thing that now that there's enough noise, maybe we can get enough people to discuss that issue where police are two things. One, responsible for police. Police have to police the police or be prosecuted themselves. And the second thing is that we need a separate prosecutor, an independent prosecutor in every one of these cases. And not only once where they bring in Keith Ellison like they're doing now. We need it to be the norm that the local prosecutors are not responsible for promoting the prosecution of bad police. And that would change everything. It would change the culture.
Rebecca
That's what we're talking
Gayhart,
about.
thanks again for joining us. I just want you to Tell us one thing. You've known Russell for a long time.
Oh my
Tell
God!
us
Don't
about
say
the
how long, Rebecca. When you look
activists.
15.
Yeah.
Don't let them do that to you,
Tell
Rebecca.
us how long, Rebecca. It's okay. He's
It's
in
too long.
Bali.
I don't want to age myself or Russ.
You can
But tell
age
us.
me, Rebecca, but and these old men, they don't mind you being old, but you're not old. So
Wow.
you ain't got to age. But I've known Rebecca, let's say, since she was a Noxema girl, since she was a little girl.
That's right. That's right. We've known each other for many, many, many years. So a lifetime, really, a few lifetimes. I mean, I'm going to
Don't say that.
kind of. I'm going to be 49 in August, Russell.
Oh, well, you're still a baby.
So
Yeah.
I met you when I was 16, I think.
That's right. That's
It's been
right.
a long time.
Wow.
Yep.
So you've seen all of this, Russell, huh?
I have.
I've seen it all.
I've seen the many stages of Russell and all the transformations and all the transitions, and yeah, I've been there for all of it. It's been a great journey.
We've been on many
Yeah.
vacations together.
Yeah.
Yes,
How's your
yes,
family, Russell? How are the
Kimora
kids?
and the kids are fine. Everybody is great. And your children?
Same. We're hanging in there. I mean, a lot of really important but difficult conversations with my kids, just lots of conversations going on, lots of emotions. And on top of, this is the last week of school for them. And then, we're in Los Angeles. So there's a lot of stuff going on the streets, and it's important conversations, but it's not always easy to have with your kids that are 8 and 10.
That's right. Wow.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, if you don't mind, Rebecca Gayhart. I know that you didn't come here for us to interview, but what is the conversation like with your kids?
Well, my kids are pretty savvy. I mean, I like to say that I think they already have an innate understanding of what's going on. And they just keep going back to, but mommy, everybody's equal. We're all people. And that's what my kids keep saying. And I think it is sort of as simple as that to kids. Like they just can't wrap their heads around, people, racism doesn't make sense to kids. I think it's taught to children. And
That's right.
So my kids, they're very lucky. Their godmom is African, Ivana Russell.
Oh, okay.
Their god sisters are African American. So they've grown up in a different way. And so my kids have been taught, everyone's the same. And I'm lucky, but most kids, I think, feel the same as my kids. They just don't understand it. And they're taught to either see colors or to hate or to dislike a certain group of people, because it's really simple with kids. They're loving beings. They are all love, kids, until they're not.
Well, we've been having a great conversation with the icon himself, Russell Simmons. Russell, it's really a privilege to be able to talk with you, and Dr. Chavis and yourself have been through the wars together. You've been to the mountaintop together. But I have to ask you one last music question before we go, because once again, it is Black Music Appreciation Month, and Dr. Chavis may want to have a final question himself. But Def Jam enabled hip hop to become a global phenomenon. What was it like transitioning from the sounds of the street to the beat of the globe?
I think that the thing that made hip hop stable and lasting, and what makes it popular here in China or in Indonesia or across the world, is authenticity. And so it never made the transition you're referring to. The world changed, it didn't change. And so that to me is what makes it special. So you'll hear Christmas rapping this Christmas. Certainly you'll hear it in Amsterdam. Certainly we'll hear it in Germany. Christmas rapping will play. And so that's from 1979. So the music hasn't changed. Yes, it's changed in some, the inflections of the rappers and some of the other things have changed, but it really has been the voice of a voiceless community, and it feels legitimate. And because it's not been watered down or changed too much, it has in instances, music, there have been songs that have been open doors, but then disappear. but the most legitimate and the most honest and hardcore songs stand the test of time because of their authenticity. So we haven't changed much. No one had to craft it in any kind of way to make it accessible. The world came to it. It didn't go to the world. And I think that's what made it have such a stable and lasting presence in the cultural landscape around the world.
Yeah, Russell, it looks like Rebecca has somebody there to say hi to you.
Who's that?
Say hi, Billy.
Hey! Hi! Wow.
Hi. Yeah,
Hi.
we're saying hi.
Well, I'm gonna give, of course, our president and CEO, Dr. Benjamin Chavis, the last question. But I just want everyone to know, again, this is a privilege to have such an icon like Russell with us, and Rebecca Gayheart jumping in like that. On Friday, we're going to continue this series of Black Music Appreciation Month. We got a special, talk about somebody else who's written a book, Otis Williams, The Original Temptation. We're going to have him and the Temptations, and they got something special specifically planned for the Black press on Friday evening at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. I do want to give you a tip off. These guys haven't seen each other since COVID-19 began. So when this reunion will be brought to you live on the Black Press Live here on this same channel. Dr. Chavis?
Yes, I'll be very brief. Earlier today, Russell, I was with MC Light and Lynn Richardson. They send their love to you.
Okay.
I would like to just request to Russell as we end the program, and we thank the NNPA, we thank BlackPressUSA.com, Norman Rich, our producer, and we thank Stacey Brown for all of his efforts on all these live streams. But Russell, there are millions of young people out in the street tonight across America and throughout the world. What is your message through the Black press to all of the people in the street tonight protesting against what happened to George Floyd? Your message.
I would like to request that they move in prayer and that they realize that the world is in perfect order. We just have to operate from that perfection. So as we are changing the world or doing what we can do in the present moment, know that we are blessed to be here in this moment. And if we can operate from that presence and that kind of awareness, we can get more done. So if we talk about having an end result, move towards it with grace. Doesn't mean slow down. It doesn't mean be less ambitious, but it means to do it with a smile, without anxiety, without frustration. Be a good servant, and don't worry. Don't worry. You're blessed to be alive. You're blessed to be here in this moment, and you're part of a change, and you have purpose. So don't go out and be frustrated and angry, and go out and be purposeful.
Yeah. Just so you know, Russell, Kurtis Blow has checked in. He's actually, we invited him to jump in on the stream itself, but he decided obviously to watch it on Facebook Live. The legend himself, Kurtis Blow, and for everybody watching, we expect to have Kurtis Blow on these airways next week. It's going to be another great show, and Kurtis, we really appreciate you. I hope you was tuning in earlier, Kurtis, when Russell was singing your praises, as you well deserve. Again, this has been a great kickoff to Black Music Appreciation Month. Russell Simmons, the icon, Def Jam founder, the philanthropist, the business mogul, as they say, and social justice leader. We appreciate you, Russell. We certainly appreciate Dr. Ben Chavis. We know he himself is the legendary civil rights leader. This has been the Black Press Live, and we thank you all for tuning in. Stay safe, stay well, and watch Russell tonight on Instagram, do his yoga, and buy his book. That book is important.
Thank you so much. God bless you all.
Thank you. God bless.
Thank you.